Good morning, everyone. I'm Josh, and I'm here to share the story behind my bot. At the age of 18, the legal driving age in the UK, I got a few parking tickets. And for those of you that know, parking tickets don't actually punish people who do things wrong. They just tend to raise money for the local government. And my parents were kind of so upset with me for getting all these tickets. And they said, we're not going to pay any more of your tickets. You're on your own. So I was stuck. On the one hand, I knew that these tickets were being issued unfairly. But on the other, I didn't want to pay a lawyer large amounts of money to help me. So I decided to do some of my own research. I trawled through hundreds of government documents and even submitted my own Freedom of Information Act request to find the main reasons that these tickets could be cancelled. After all this research, I wrote my first letter of appeal quite nervously and sent it to the local government. Within a few weeks, I got a response. It said, "You're successful, the tickets have been cancelled." And it wasn't long before I was helping all my friends and family appeal their tickets too. It seemed like everybody I knew wanted help, and I became the local parking guru in my area. And this gave me an idea. Rather than helping everyone one by one, I should create a website to help people automatically. And I shared this idea of a sort of robot lawyer with a few lawyers in London. And they all said, some more politely than others, that it was stupid and could never be done. But I wanted to impress my friends, so I decided to go ahead anyway. After a few sleepless nights, it was done. In the first week, I was ecstatic that 90 of my friends were using the robot lawyer. In week 2, it was even more surprising. 700 people in my local community had signed up. I thought that the story had ended there. But then a blogger at the Huffington Post noticed my robot lawyer. She passed it on and wrote a blog post, which went viral. All of a sudden, all the major news outlets, the BBC, the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, were covering it. And in a few short months, 160,000 people had signed up. Since the start of the year, the robot lawyer has claimed back $3.7 million in parking tickets. And the best part for me is that the same lawyers who shunned me at the beginning were now calling me up, wanting to buy the site off me. And this gave me this taught me that the issue of using artificial intelligence to help people with their legal issues is bigger than just parking tickets. And so I decided to expand to other areas of the law. I decided to take on the airlines. In Europe, as many of you know, if your flight is delayed by more than 3 hours, you can claim hundreds of euros back in compensation. Unfortunately, to claim this back, you need to hire a lawyer who takes a large commission. I wanted to include this within my robot lawyer, which is what I showed you at the demo. The way it works is the robot uses machine learning to discover exactly what the user is saying. Once it knows the issue, it takes down a few details and then places these details into a legally sound document, which can be sent either to the local authorities or to the airlines. After the flight compensation tool went live, flight law firms began asking to acquire the site. And I later discovered that the reason all these law firms wanted to buy my website was because it threatened the very existence of their businesses. And this led to 2 key takeaways for me. First, that AI is going to replace increasingly skilled work. As a 19-year-old, I created the entirety of the robot lawyer myself, and I think it does quite a good job of replacing parking lawyers. I know that there are thousands of programmers with decades more experience than me working on similar issues. Second, the rise of the robots will help the most disadvantaged in society. When I started the website, I began to receive emails from the elderly and disabled in the UK, who are the primary victims of these unfair parking tickets. Similarly, the economically disadvantaged in the future will gain increasing access to services that were previously unaffordable. For example, over the summer, I'm working on integrating my robot lawyer to help Syrian refugees claim asylum in Europe. The way it will work is that the robot will understand Arabic and then be able to produce documents in English, a huge technical challenge. At the end of the day, my ultimate aim is to level the playing field so that anyone in society can have as much legal power as the richest. Although it's a long way from there, if someone can have the same standard of advice as a billionaire, then how can that be a bad thing? Thank you very much.
Wow. All right, that's awesome, and I'd like to thank your parents for the tough love that got you going on this. Dennis has also built something incredible.
Thank you very much. So, we schedule meetings. That's my presentation. That's the end of it. No more, no less. And if I ask all of you in here whether you set up a meeting this week or last week and you don't raise your hand, you're a fucking liar. So we all set up meetings, and it's not that it's hard to set up meetings. The way it works is that Nick will shoot me an email and say, hey Dennis, do you got time for a cup of coffee? I look at my phone and say, yeah, sure, we can do coffee. How about next Thursday? Not Thursday, can you do Friday? No, I'm traveling. Can we do Monday? Sure. 1:30? My office? Can you come down to 25 Broadway? Sure. Can you shoot an invite? And at this point, it's like, fucking, I just want to meet up with Nick. And that's all I want. And the only way you can get out of this is you win some sort of corporate lottery and you become SVP of Flim Flam at Time Inc. and they give you your own human personal assistant so that when Nick emails me, I can say, hey, I would love to meet up. I have CC'd in Jesse. He can help put something on my calendar. Send, archive, and then Jesse can speak to Nick all he wants. 10 emails, 2 emails, couldn't care less. All I want is some invite on my calendar, a little bit later, today, tomorrow, next week, but it's not my job. That is the agent that we tried to create here, so that we do not, next slide, here we go create an app or an extension or a plugin or some web service, Tungle me, Doodle me, but something for where when the email arrives and I'm sitting in my underwear in my bed at 10:30 eating cereal, reading that email from Nick, I can say, hey, you know what? Now's not the time to kind of double click into my scheduling app and say, hey, yeah, we should do that. Double click, because multitasking is obviously not great on your phone. Double click, let me find the pink app. Let me click the pink app. Let me find 3 times. Oh, fuck, I forgot his email. Double click back, copy paste, which is also shit on the phone. Okay, here's next email. Then back to the app. That just doesn't work. What you would want is a complete replica of this experience of having that human assistant, so that when this email arrives, where some odd friend of yours have a kind of set of hidden constraints where, do you got time to meet up later today, tomorrow, or perhaps early next week? I have to kind of decipher that. All I want in return is to say, sure, I'm up for that. I have CC'd in Amy at x.ai, and she can help put something on my calendar. And this agent then needs to understand, what was I just asked to do? What is the given objective of what Dennis wants done? Remove me from the conversation, reach out separately to multiple participants, have very human-like discussions, or really negotiations with all of the participants, and upon conclusion of that negotiation, send out an invite on the right date, the right time, the right duration, and location, and all of that good stuff that goes into the invites, and have left me out of it. That sounds simple, at least in offering. We've spent, come this autumn, 65 guys in a basement in Manhattan, 3 years in trying to kind of create Amy to this one very specific thing. And I think it comes down to this one item for where it's, as I'm sure you would agree, somewhat simple to have machines talk to each other. It's probably equally simple to have humans talk to each other, but once you want a machine to speak to a human, you figure out just how crazy people are. And they are just not trustworthy. We all say stuff that are just not true, but we believe is true. Say for this meeting today that we're supposed to be on stage at 9:25, late last night, 2 a.m., Nick shoots me an email and says, hey, the meeting tomorrow, can we push that half an hour? Happens all the time, right? It's not true though. It is not tomorrow, it's today. It's just very human to use the word tomorrow once we haven't slept yet. And there's tens of thousands of edge cases for where we say something which just isn't true. Or you write Wednesday-Friday. You obviously mean some sort of range where Thursday is included. But you never wrote Thursday. How does the machine understand that? And that's what we've been working on so that we actually do it so well. We think, and I can give you just one stat in closing on that, for where plenty of the people that we arrange meetings for on the guest side don't recognize that this is a machine. And in 11% of all the meetings that we set up, at least one email have only one intent, which is gratitude. Think about that for a second. As in, somebody wrote the machine something where they don't want it to take any action. Thank you very much. I appreciate you setting up the meeting on Friday. I really apologize for my delayed response. All sorts of responses for where there is no action, but I still want either the machine which I don't know is a machine to feel good, or the machine which I know is a machine to feel good. And I'll give you just one final thing here, which is, me of all people, I certainly know how this works. All my meetings start with, Amy, would you be so kind? How much time do I have? Amy, would you be so kind? Why do I even write that? It's not like she's going to take special care because Dennis is so nice. She's still going to set up the meeting, however I'm going to phrase it, but I still do. And you can actually see that all of the hosts that we set up meetings for, and we have hundreds of thousands of meetings that we set up all the time, they actually have a lot of love that goes into it. And I think they've ended up with, and if you go to, this is super funny, x.ai/love notes, you'll see that they moved away from talking about this as software or it or application or app, but she, he, her, the whole idea of I'm dealing with an entity here which I have to call her even though I've been told it's a machine. And I find that super fascinating. So that's us, setting up meetings, doing a lot of them. Thank you very much.
I would like to say that I can vouch for Amy. Amy has been setting up meetings for me. Dennis said that she's done hundreds of thousands of meetings in the last month. Those were actually all just mine. Neither of your bots is totally artificial intelligence. It's not just some thinking robot. It's not just a bunch of bits with intelligence. It's a combination of code, human supervision, decision trees. So I want to get in a little bit into what is the AI, what is the machine learning, what is the decision tree. So Josh, it looks like from your bot that a lot of it is a decision tree, right? It's choose your own adventure. It's you type A, if they type A, type B or C or D. If they type B, then go to 2 or 3 or X. Yes. Tell me how it works and tell me how the machine learning figures into it.
Sure. So it's a combination, as you said, of a decision tree and machine learning. The machine learning is applied to recognizing what the user has said. There are a million ways to say, I got a parking ticket, and there's no way to program every single response in. So it needs to learn what that means. And then the second aspect is the legal aspect. For example, if the robot knows that a certain road gets a large number of tickets, it will actually reorder the questions to ask, perhaps was the sign faulty on that road? And so it can look for patterns in the law to help and get people out of their tickets most quickly.
So the natural language part of the determining what they said, how did you code that? How did you figure that out? What was the base for that?
So I programmed in about 1,000 different responses. For example, I said, I got a parking ticket. I got a PCN, which is another term for a parking ticket. And then the computer compares these phrases to what the user is saying. And every time it classifies a new phrase, it adds this to the database. So it actually improves as more people are using it.
And Dennis, you use sort of a similar system where it's constantly improving, and you also have humans who will look at certain responses that Amy gives and grade them, evaluate them. How are humans involved in the process?
So there's really two parts, I think, to any system, and this is completely unfair to the data science team, but you can think of it as a text extraction challenge and a text generation challenge.
Yep.
And the text extraction challenge is probably where we deploy the most humans. We've had 25 people full-time over the last 2 years just annotating and labeling data, primarily on 4 items: the intent, the time, the people, and the location. And they just label the hell out of a ton of snippets. So I need to label up Wednesday, hundreds of thousands of times to kind of understand that. So that's certainly the extraction challenge, and for where we deploy, I would say, the vast majority of the machine learning in the system. On the generation side, for us, we made the bet that it could not really be a decision tree. There's simply just too many outcomes where whatever tree we set up, we will never get to the end of it. So we have this kind of generic kind of compilation of responses that can be created on the fly, but they're all little snippets that we actually put together, but there's really an infinite amount of opportunities in the way they go out. So humans are in data annotation and labeling. Just Wednesday dash Friday, later, afternoon, on my return, all those words we need to kind of train on.
So I'm going to enter the most complicated possible meeting request I can today and try to stump Amy. This is a moment for bots, obviously, right? We're having this panel. Facebook did their big thing 2 weeks ago. Everybody is talking about bots. You probably get little notes about how bots are the next apps, and bots are the future, and bots are the next revolution. What are the things that bots can do now that they couldn't do a year ago? Like, what has improved to put us in this moment? And what is the thing they can't do now that you think we're close to solving?
I certainly think we reached the point for where our ability to understand natural language is at a level for where whatever you write to Amy, you somehow just assume that she can understand that. That was a little bit harder if you go back a decade. Certainly both on the ability to collect enough data, have that well annotated, and the models we would apply and the cost to kind of run those models. So I think we reached that inflection point. And that I find interesting. And then I think the kind of software paradigm have changed a little bit from desktop software to web services to apps to a new, perhaps, messaging type set of services for where I almost just assume I can text Interflora and have a bouquet of flowers sent to my mom. It feels natural. Why wouldn't I be able to do that?
So it's not just AI is getting better, it's that our habits are changing so much.
I think so.
That you can even put a relatively small amount of new AI into this new habit, and it makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's also about a shift in the way people understand the technology. 2 years ago, if you said to someone, use my bot, they would say, what are you talking about? But now with all these big companies releasing their SDKs and all the advertising, people are starting to get accustomed to interacting with bots. And I think it won't happen until people get comfortable.
So what's the thing where you got stuck where you couldn't do it? Where you were up all night, it was the third night, you stayed awake all night, and you're like, if I can just solve this one darn thing,
yes.
You thought, I'm close, but I can't do it now.
It was actually programming in the individual responses. I programmed in so many responses, and then I'd get like my mother to test it, and it just wouldn't work because she would put in something else. And that's when I decided to incorporate machine learning, and it started to improve from there.
Here's a really funny thing. So we are obviously all just propeller heads down in the office, but for the text extraction part, for the text generation part, and you would love this, we ended up trying to kind of figure out what does that UI guy or that UX guy or that information architect look like. So if we're going to create an app tonight, you and I, at my apartment down on Wall Street, we know exactly who to hire, right? It seems kind of very obvious. Well kind of researched positions, the UI guy does this, the UX guy does that. What does that look like for an agent? There are no 2 pixels, there's no button or drop down. So you need really a new position. And we ended up creating these AI interaction designer positions for where we hired actually a drama major out of Harvard, for where her primary past have been one of creating characters. Because I think the worst thing that can happen here is that you end up with a bag of templates that feels like a Verizon phone tree, where you're just going to throw up 2 ways into it. It's like, fucking Amy. But we needed something where if you speak to Amy on Monday and you speak to her on Friday, and in 3 months, it feels like I've talked to her before. There's some sort of relationship here, and we've had these people kind of work full time to create this character.
Excellent. So if you spend a lot of time becoming good at email and like being charming on email, you might have a job one day at x.ai. So let's talk about the economic consequences, which you brought up, Josh. Obviously, you're going to displace some lawyers. You're going to displace some people who work at airline companies. You're going to displace some assistants. How is the economy going to change because of this, and how do you feel about that?
I think that my bot is just an example of what's happening in the wider economy. Driverless cars, for example, and driverless trucks. Truck driving is the #1 employer in America. And if robots take over cars, then all of a sudden millions of people will be out of a job. And so I think there'll be this huge kind of economic shift where there won't be jobs for people. And the only thing that the government can do to sort that out is give everyone a certain amount of money every month as sort of a basic income. And I think we're about 10 years away from driverless cars doing that. And it will be really interesting to see how the government deals with this massive unemployment.
That was a big, bold, specific answer. I love it. That's great.
So,
Dennis?
So I'm Danish, or as your candidates call me, a socialist, or at least that's what I've been told on TV. So I should believe in that. I'm a little bit more optimistic, though, and I think there's really two avenues you can walk down. There's the one for where I think what both you do and what we do is something that would kind of democratize access to something that would otherwise be for the few before. So I would never hire a lawyer to take care of my parking ticket. I would either just swallow it or fiddle around on the internet and do it myself. And I think it's the same for an assistant, for where I would never hire somebody at $50K to sit at my front office and manage my calendar. So I'll just do it myself. So I think we are in the kind of positive avenue of democratizing access to something that was really for the select few. The truck drivers, I'm just so optimistic that whatever are being displaced, I think history have somewhat suggested that we always come out better on the other side. So we never had more jobs in the US than we have right now, and I believe that to be true forever. And I should say so because I turned American 3-4 weeks ago.
Congratulations. I had somebody once say to me that you'll always have a job as long as you're smarter or cheaper than the robots. The problem is they keep getting smarter, they keep getting cheaper, I'm getting a little dumber and a little more expensive, so who knows. All right, we have 32 seconds left. Josh, why are you still in college?
Well, Stanford has been the best network ever. I have access to professors who helped me create my robot, and without that network, I couldn't do anything that I'm doing now. So at the moment, I want to maintain access to that, learn as much as I can so I can be ahead of this technology. And, but it's not out of the question, dropping out.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to end 4 seconds early. Dennis, Josh, these people are great. Keep watching them.